Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Okay, everybody. Our next guest, Craig Andrews, he is a COVID survivor. Now, he's going to tell this really fantastic story and everything about it, but long and short of it is the doctors told his wife while he was in a coma that Mrs. Andrews, Craig is not going to survive. At some point, we're going to have to bring hospice in, and we're going to have to pull the plug because Craig is not going to survive, because that's the direction that his COVID took. Okay, so obviously Craig survived, and so we don't want to dwell on the COVID story quite as much, but it became a valuable tool for him, and that tool is exactly this. He learned how to build trust in his clients. And he does it really cool because he's a marketing expert, and he does it with these one-time offers, these special offers that build value and build relationships. So you're going to hear us talking about this in his interview about how he does that for his clients. He actually helps them come up with these offers that will build trust and build that love that their clients need in them, so that they can actually have long-term clients, lasting clients that feed their businesses for years to come, and they just building service and trust in our world. So why don't we listen to how Craig builds these one-time offers that helps people build their businesses in fantastic directions. Well, welcome to the show, Craig. And you have a huge story that has led you to how you actually help people overcome some of the fears of big ticket selling, and how you help them get over the fear of actually finding their real value so they can charge the right amount of money, right?
Absolutely. Michael, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, my whole journey, we do this thing called first time offers, and we'll talk about this more as we go along. I started on this journey way back in 2017. It took me about 18 months to get sort of starting to work. But when the part of the story that you're talking about goes back to August of 2021, where I went in the hospital. This was during COVID. It was the Delta variant, the Delta wave of COVID. And I went in on August 10th, walked up to the desk and said, I'm having trouble breathing, except it came across in short spurts where I was taking a breath in between words. And they immediately pulled me back behind a curtain and put me on oxygen and started looking at me. And my wife had parked the car, and I heard her on the other side of the curtain saying, "Where's my husband? Where's my husband?" And they said, "Ma'am, you need to leave." She's like, "Well, where's my husband?" They said, "You can't see him." This was one of the things that we did during COVID, was we locked out families. And so she had to go back and sit in the car. This is August in Texas. And I don't know if you've ever sat in a car in August in Texas, but it's not a lot of fun. And she goes back out. But it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but I would not see my wife for almost another 2 months. She would see me sooner, but I wouldn't see her, because 11 days later, they shot me full of morphine. They didn't tell me that's what they were giving me. They said they were going to give me something to help me sleep, but they shot me full of morphine. And that apparently suppresses respiration, which is not good if you have COVID. And a few hours after they did that, they called her in the middle of the night and they said, Mrs. Andrews, we want to put your husband on the ventilator. And she said, well, he doesn't want to go on the ventilator. I hear him shouting in the background, no ventilator. And the doctor laughed at her and said, well, if he doesn't go on the ventilator, he'll be dead in 24 hours. And you can't listen to him anyway. He's so high on morphine, he doesn't know what he's saying. And she said, well, how many people have you had survive? And the doctor said, nobody has survived. And that was the case with Delta variant. If you went on the ventilator, you died. Yeah. That was the outcome. As a matter of fact, I was the first one that left that ICU alive. And we've asked some people that are familiar with that medical system, and they said, I was probably one of a few in the entire city of Austin that survived Delta variant on the ventilator. But it was lights out for me. It was lights out for about 6 weeks. And when I woke up 6 weeks later, something fascinating had happened. My trust in the doctors had plummeted. It had fallen through the floor. But while my trust in the doctors had plummeted, my trust in my wife had gone through the roof. All while I was asleep. It was really bizarre. And for the first week and a half after I woke up, my mind was really scrambled. The doctors would come by and they would want to do things. And, looking back on it in hindsight, the things they were asking for were immensely reasonable. And with a clear head, I would say yes. But at the time, all I knew was I didn't trust them. And so I'd say no, and they would have to go to my wife and talk to her, and then she would come to me and say, hey, the doctors want to do this. And I'd ask her, is it safe? And she'd say, oh, yeah, it's safe. You should do this. And so once I heard from her, I said, okay. Well, about a week and a half later, I started realizing there were things about the world that I believed that nobody around me believed. I'd been living in a dream state for 6 weeks. That dream state was my reality. And it was very vivid. To this day, I still remember those dreams. And when I started realizing that those things didn't happen, I was really nervous. And I called my wife over to the side of the bed and I said, I'm going to tell you some things. And I need you to let me know if they really happened. And she said, okay. Well, one of the first things that happened was, one of the first things I told her about was, I said, have we been in Louisiana? She said, no, we haven't been there. She said, why? And I said, well, I thought we went to a resort in Louisiana for me to convalesce. And I started telling her about what happened at the resort, including several times a day, somebody would come into the room and spray raw cow's milk at my face and it would make me feel better. And turns out that was an analog for something else that was happening in the real world. But I told her about how at one point she came in, she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, Craig, this is Karen. I'm your wife. It's going to be okay. And when I told her that, she sat back and she said, Craig, I said those exact words while you were in your coma. And so as time, I got out of the hospital and I started processing all that had happened. And I kept thinking about this radical transformation of trust in a very short period of time. And I realized that's what we do for clients with our first time offer. And, let me back up and explain that a little bit. So we work exclusively with people that have high ticket products and services, largely services. And as a matter of fact, we were working with somebody yesterday that, their current sales process is, hi, how do you do? Nice to meet you. Would you like to sign up for a $1.2 million contract? And they've been having problems with sales and they say, hey, Craig, can you help us out? And I said, well, I think you need a first time offer. Think of it as a little coffee date where you have like 3 to 5 deliverables that represent 3 to 5 milestones that move them 3 to 5 steps closer from where they are to where they want to be. And I said, let's build something like that. And we actually constructed that yesterday. It took a full day. It's a lot of work to get there. But one of the things that hit me as I was processing what happened in the hospital was it's tied to a Maya Angelou quote. She said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. And while I was asleep and people thought I couldn't hear them, the doctors were speaking death and despair into my life. And at the same time, my wife was speaking words of hope, words of life. Right. And in those short 6 weeks, it polarized the trust relationship that I had with the doctors versus my wife. And it hit me that our first time offers, one of the essential items, and we had to make sure we mapped this out yesterday, was there has to be a part where you're actually solving a problem for them, not telling them a problem they have, actually solving a problem for them. And it turns out that when you come along somebody and help them solve a problem, it builds trust like you wouldn't believe. And it's the fastest trust building mechanism I've been able to find in business. And we found that when you do that, moving on to the bigger, the higher ticket offer becomes a lot easier because you're starting from such a higher level of trust than just a whole series of conversations.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always say in a lot of my networking groups and everything is that people always talk about the no like and trust factor, and I tell them, I said, no, we don't. It's like no like and trust isn't going to get the sale. It isn't going to get somebody on board with your services. You need them to love and trust you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you're trying to do. That first time offer is something is like, see, you can trust me. I care about you. I'm going to give you these first few steps towards.
Yeah, and it's not even you saying that you can trust me. It's when you do these things, the natural outcome is they trust you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazingly simple in structure. Help somebody in need. When you help somebody in need, you're their hero.
Right. It sounds simple enough, but I don't think everybody gets the concept, right?
No, there's a saying I heard. Somebody said, "Craig, you have greedy marketer syndrome." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you're a marketer. If you're a marketer, you have greedy marketer syndrome, and if you're a salesman, you have greedy sales syndrome." And the point of that is, and I see this in businesses, and it's people get so focused on selling that becomes their top priority, and they and I'm not besmirching their motives. I think they genuinely want to help people, but it's more the process that they go about it. And we draw analogies between dating or stages of courtship. We say there's like 5 stages of courtship. You have an introduction, then you have a conversation, then you have a coffee date, which is our first time offer, and then you have dinner, and then you have commitment. And so if you think about people going out and courting, you've seen people in your life, you look at them, you're like, dude, you're screwing it up. You could probably have a meaningful relationship with this woman or whoever that you're pursuing, but you're skipping some steps. You need to slow it down and do a few things. And so we get that when it's human relationships, human personal relationships, but for some reason we lose our manners when we move to business. Now we think we're being mannerly because we pick up the tab and we say please and thank you and that sort of thing. But we're still basically asking somebody, we're doing the equivalent of walking into a bar, seeing a complete stranger and saying, hey, you're kind of cute, may I have your phone number? Or what the heck, let's just get married.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't work in those type of relationships. Why would it work in business, right?
Right. Well, and here's what people would say, well, I'm doing that and it's working. I was like, yeah, you know what? I knew somebody years ago who told me about how he would go into a bar and he'd go up to every woman in the bar and say, "Hey, do you want to go to bed with me?" And as you would expect, almost every single one would say no. But there would be one that would say yes. And he was like, "See, you just have to ask enough people." And so that's what people are saying. And you hear this. It's there's a book out there actually called The Game of Numbers that just talks about front loading your funnel, just pushing up people in the funnel, and money will come out the other side. But it's missing the relational thing. And I would say the other thing you have to think about is, if let's take that bar situation. If you go in and you find somebody that would say yes to that offer, you kind of have to question the character of the person that just said yes to you. Right. And I would say, yeah. And so I would say the same for business. If you have somebody that agrees to sign up for a $1.2 million offer with a complete stranger, you gotta question their judgment. Are they going to be the best customer for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, you probably hear this all the time about these consultants that they have, business owners. It's like, oh, I hate going to work. It's like I had to deal with this client or that client, and they're just so. We could go on and on about what the complaints are, right? But if they build a relationship with the client instead of just onboarding them, do you think that they would have a better time at business?
Yeah, and also kind of like in dating, they would be more selective in who they take on as clients. Mm-hmm. And so again, we went through this workshop yesterday, and at one point I said, "Tell me how it is with you. Do you ever have a client that seems to consume way more time, and it's not productive time? It's time where you're having to do CYA things. You're digging through 100 emails to find that email where you agreed to something, and now they're saying you didn't agree to it, and all that." And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's so horrible." And that's the thing that happens when you bring in, if you're in a high touch service business and you bring a bad client into your world, they're going to drain your time. And it's time that you can't build back. You can't get back. You can't bill it to others. It's time you can't spend growing your own business. And I mean, I've had it. I've had clients shoot me an email on Friday night, some angry email on Friday night, and by Monday I've wasted 5 hours obsessing about that email. That's 5 hours that didn't go to helping them. It didn't go to helping my business. Nobody benefited from those 5 hours other than somebody, shot out an angry rant, and maybe it felt good in the moment.
Mm-hmm. So we're more selective in who we bring on, which means that that whoever we bring into our business is more willing to work with us, kind of a side-by-side win-win-win situation, right?
Yeah. And so let's go back to the coffee date. We keep bringing it back to that. If you think about when you go on a coffee date, mm-hmm. you're removing risk. You're removing the commitment risk. You're removing financial risk, even some personal security risk. Often, you don't know where each other lives. You drive there separately. You meet each other. The ladies tell me they'll have a girlfriend that will call in 15, 20 minutes to see if they need a rescue. And so there's all these elements that remove the risk because you're uncertain. But you only go on that coffee date because you're hoping for bigger, better things. You don't go on the coffee date because you expect it to fail. You go on it because you're like, there's some potential here. This could actually go somewhere. And if the coffee date works out well, then you continue the discussion into bigger, better things. But there's a certain number of coffee dates that at the end of the coffee date, you look at the other person and you say, "You know what? You're a wonderful person. I don't think we're wonderful together."
Isn't it good to know that ahead of time than after you've dumped a whole bunch of time into the relationship?
Yeah. And it's interesting when we're designing these, and we did this yesterday. We one of the things I asked him, I said, "Please tell me all the traits of a non-ideal client, a client that you don't want to work with. And we listed those out. And when we were designing the offer, we broke it. I looked at those traits and I said, okay, these traits you can filter out in the initial sales conversation. But these other traits, we're going to design the first time offer to selectively filter those people out of your system. And so that they self-select out. And that's the really cool thing. When we do these well, when you present it's typically a mini project. When you present the mini project, if you structure it correctly, there's some people who look at that and say, I don't want that. And if you design it to repel those that are your non-ideal clients, it works wonderfully. Let me give you an example. We're talking really abstract. Mm-hmm. So let me give an example of two places where people have seen these type of offers before. The first one is a simple offer. The next one's a complex offer, and we deal in the complex offers. So the first offer, years ago, when albums were popular the first time, I don't know if you know, but apparently albums are back again, and people are collecting them. But when they were popular the first time, Columbia House Records ran a special where you could get 13 albums for 1 penny.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I'll tell you, at least half the people I talk to, when I talk about that, they say, oh, I was a member. I took that deal. I'm not kidding. Half the people I talk to have taken that deal. And so it's a great offer. If you're the type of person that wants to build a record collection, Columbia House Records will get you 13 albums closer to your goal for 1 penny. It's hard to say no to. But we would call that a simple offer. If you're doing a high-ticket product or service, an offer structured like that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So here's another example. There was a guy named Bob Stupak who bought a dumpy old hotel at the end of the Vegas Strip. It was like a Motel 6, nothing special, but he renamed it Bob Stupak's Vegas World. Presently, it's called the Strat. It used to be called the Stratosphere, and so anybody that's been to Vegas probably is familiar with it now. But the offer Bob Stupak ran, he said, give me $396, I will give you 3 days and 2 nights in one of my deluxe suites. When you arrive, there will be a bottle of champagne waiting for you in your room. All of your drinks on property are free, whether you're gambling or not. Even if you're sitting in one of our entertainment lounges, you pay nothing more for your drinks. Not only that, but for your $396, I will give you $600 of chips to use in my casino. Mm-hmm. So right there, you see there were 4 elements. This is where we're moving into a complex offer. We believe a good first-time offer should have a minimum of 3, a maximum of 5 deliverables. Less than 3 feels underwhelming. More than 5 overwhelms the brain, makes it hard to make a decision. And so that one had 4. But the thing that I really love about it is with that offer, if you're the type of person that likes to drink and gamble, it's hard to say no. This is great. Free booze and $600 of free money to spend. If you're like me, it's not an appealing offer because I don't like to gamble. I'll drink a little bit, but I'm not going to drink that much booze. And unless they're serving really, really nice wine, that's not going to be a compelling offer for me. So I'm not going to take Bob Stupak up on his offer, which is exactly what he wants. Because one of the things that Bob Stupak understood was he understood the lifetime value of his customers, and he understood that his money was made in the casino. And if he could get people in the casino and drinking, he was going to make a lot of money off them. And so he doesn't want me staying in one of the rooms in his hotel because he makes the most money when all of the rooms in his hotel are packed with gamblers that like to drink. And so that's one of the really neat things about the offer is it repels people that are non-ideal customers while attracting those who are. And so when we're helping clients like we did yesterday build these offers, we're actually looking at the traits that make somebody a non-ideal customer, and we're designing things into the offer to repel those type of people.
I totally understand that. I told you earlier that of course our podcast interviews have always been free. They always will be free, and it gets me to know a lot of people and network with a lot of people. Um, because the more you network, the more people are listening, and everything. The brand itself gets bigger on one end, right? But when it comes to our editing process, people look at me weird when I tell them that we have a corporate minimum, and we actually, because of the size team we're not MGM Studios, so we can't. It's counterproductive to go above a certain budget level.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why do you cut off? Why do you have a minimum and why do you have a maximum? And it's like, because that's where we actually can serve you.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
so it sounds like
exactly.
that's what you're trying to do for your clients with this offer is you're trying to eliminate some of the things that are non-ideal for their business so that they can focus on the ideals.
Yeah, and one of the things that we try to do in that is we try to design things in there that instead of looking like a hard limit, hey, we're not going to talk to you unless you're doing this minimum. And if you're doing more than this maximum, we're not going to. Instead of having things that are, a little more blunt like that, we put things in there that we know will be unsavory to the non-ideal clients, so they self-select out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm a happier person if my non-ideal clients say, Craig, we don't want to work with you, as opposed to me telling them, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just not into you. That's a conversation I don't like to have.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and so for me, it works best. I'd rather him go away with a positive experience saying, hey, Greg looks like he's doing some great things. It's not right for me, but, I saw these other things that are really good. They may be right for you. I'd rather anybody I encounter, I'd rather send them away as a potential advocate for my business. And so that's why we try to design those things in that will be unsavory. And kind of like Bob Stupak. Bob Stupak didn't say, Craig, don't stay in my hotel. I don't want your business. I don't want your kind. He just designed his offer so it wasn't appealing to me.
Which is kind of funny is because I remember the Stratosphere, right?
Yeah.
And like from, oh my God, I guess that was like maybe 25 years ago, right? And
yeah.
I never stayed there. I was in the hotel. I've actually been all the way up the tower and all that kind of stuff, right? And I know the hotel, but never stayed there. I always stayed at the Caesar or someplace like that. And now I start to get why certain hotels have certain, because I always felt, when I say the Caesar, I felt comfortable with all the other people that were around me. But when the foot long drinks that they sell, that they have on the up and down the strip.
Like I said, I'm not much of a drinker, but yeah,
it's like neither am I. I'm not a drinker, right? And so it's like I look at it like, wow, but you didn't see that many people in the Caesar walking through with these foot long drinks. They go past it,
right? Yeah, yes,
because we were the ones who didn't drink a lot. We wanted the shows,
right?
And they had fantastic shows there.
Yeah.
So that's why it was we were there for the shows, not for the gambling and the drinking. So it makes sense how they actually designed their offers for these hotels.
Right. And that's the thing. It's about knowing who your customer is and having the confidence to say, you know what, I think you're great. I don't think we're great together.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because you must have a process that helps people learn who their non-ideal is and who their ideal is, and maybe those who are just sitting somewhere in the middle that may tip either way. But how does that work? How do you get people to figure out who that is in their business so they can do the marketing to the right people and rule out the people that aren't going to be so comfortable?
A lot of it is talking to them about who they're. I usually go in, when we start this process, we ask them to think of 3 names of people they know that are either current clients or they would like to be clients, that if you could have 100 more people like this as clients of your business, life would be wonderful. And then we start interviewing them to understand the traits of those people. And we're looking for the traits, there's a lot of talk out there about persona, development, and, persona a lot of the personas might read, Michael Clogs is, as a video producer and editor, and he just gives a lot of generic things and says, you like drinking pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, or whatever, however that song goes. And the which if you live in BC, you have plenty of opportunities to get caught in the rain. But those things are missing kind of the essential things. So when we go in, we start interviewing them. We look for the traits of the traits that make somebody, the traits that are a little bit more common that attract a number of people. So we were working with somebody recently who works with podcasters, people who want to be podcasters as a mechanism to grow their business. And we talked to them a little bit, and then we actually talked to one of their customers, a very satisfied customer. And it was funny. When I'm interviewing their customer says, hey, I'm not like the rest of their customers. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in customer interviews. I'm not like the rest of their customers. I'm different. And I'm sitting there listening. And at one point he asked me, he said, Craig, are you getting anything useful out of this? Am I helping you understand their customers? I said, well, this fellow's name was Jerry. I said, Jerry, one of the things that stands out to me is that you have a heart for giving and serving. You really have you're missional to change the world. He said, yeah. I said, do you think that's common amongst people who do podcasting? He said, oh yeah, absolutely. Do you think if somebody's not missional, do you think they'll be successful at podcasting? He said, no, they'll fail immediately. So right there, as we think about designing somebody's offer, and we actually help this company, this was actually Friday, we've been doing a bunch of these lately. We were helping them design their first-time offer to bring customers into their world. And when I said design something in there that's unappealing to their non-ideal client, one of the 3 to 5 deliverables was building the giving proposition. I forgot, we came up with a different name in it in the session, but when they're presenting the offer, it's saying, hey, look, if you're going to be successful as a podcaster, you need to be the type of person that gives in advance, and we're going to help you find exactly what you're going to give that will give in advance. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're talking to somebody that's just a taker, somebody who doesn't believe in giving in advance, you see how that would be a poison pill for them, and they're like, whoa, sorry, this isn't what I was looking for.
Right. To be totally honest with you, I agree with him that a successful podcaster probably is going to be a giver first.
Yeah. And, at the point I had that interview with this fella, I mean, I've guested on over 4 dozen podcasts, and I'd missed that element. I mean, just so you know, I have a free gift for your audience. That it was something that I did just because it just seemed right, but it hadn't quite clicked to me that, for my client that helps other people become podcasters, the people that will experience the most success are those that have a give in advance attitude. And it didn't come clear until I actually sat down and talked to one of his customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally see the given advance thing because before we jumped into this, you were talking about our main website for depiction at depictions.media, and it's a news blog, and you're like, it's all about advocacy, and because that's who we are at the soul of things, and we were talking about um, documentaries and stuff that we have done that are also advocacy. So, with that being said, most of the people that we work with for our podcast editing projects are advocates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you help people in that respect? Or some of these people, do you actually help them find the mirror to themselves also?
Yeah, it's we always work best with people who are like us. So one of the groups of companies that we've helped, usually we're doing B2B, but one of the areas where we've done some B2C, because again it's high ticket, more importantly high trust, very very high trust, is financial advisors. You think about the amount of trust you're trying to build. You're trying to get somebody to sign their life savings over for you to manage, and the very first step that we take with a financial advisor is we have a self-assessment. It's a 10-minute self-assessment that we have them go through. And at the end of that, we tell them there are 9 personas of high net worth investors. Out of those 9, there are 3 that you'll work amazingly well with. Out of those 9, there are 3 that you will work horribly with. It'll be a horrible relationship.
Yeah.
And then there's another 3 that are kind of middle of the road. And we recommend that you work only with the 3 that you work best with. And so we help them discover that. And but the assessment is basically asking them how they would want to be treated if they were a client of a financial advisor. And so it's exactly what you're saying. We tend to love others the way we want to be loved. And so if we find people that want to be loved the way we naturally give love, that's usually going to be the most mutually beneficial relationship.
Again, that totally makes sense. So it sounds like you have a lot of success with this process, and your clients probably their sales probably skyrocket through the roof because they're doing things that follow the one thing that they're passionate about, where they think that they are in the world, and how they're going to make that change to the world.
Yeah, that. And one of the things when we're designing the first time offers, we tell them the biggest hurdle, and we said this yesterday, we said this Friday when we were doing this, we said the biggest hurdle that you're going to have to overcome to get an effective first time offer is moving out of sales mode and into service mode. And once we can, and this is part of the reason it takes a full day, is we devote about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. It depends upon the group. Some people are faster, some people are slower. But we devote 3 to 4 hours into moving them into a mindset of service. And Fridays was amazing. Once we got them into that mindset, and we asked them, there were a number of exercises we did, including, problem statement. And say, hey, if you had a friend come to you with this problem statement, and for whatever reason you knew they would never be a customer, but you decide you're going to help them. You're going to help them solve a problem. You're going to devote 5 hours of your life to helping them solve this problem. How are you going to use those 5 hours? And Friday was amazing. He was like, oh, I can tell you exactly. And literally, once we got him to that point, it took less than 10 minutes to identify their first time offer, because where he was coming at it from was, here's what I would do to help a friend even if I wasn't getting paid. Well, guess what? That also works out to be amazingly seductive in the sales process.
Wow. Who would have thought of that? So, let me ask you this, because like every great conversation, you start to run out of time, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and it's a two-part question. Who who are the people that you don't like to work with versus the people that you do like to work with?
Um, I this is going to sound funny. It I'm shocked by the number of highly educated people that after I get on the phone with them, I'm like, "Oh, we're not a match at all." Which is kind of funny because I have a graduate degree, I would think, "Oh, here's my community. I can help them. I can understand their world. I come from I have a couple engineering degrees, bachelor's and a master's in electrical engineering. I can grasp a lot of technical concepts, and I think, I should be able to help these people. And what I find is highly educated people are often so confident in their own abilities they're unteachable. And it's bizarre because the reason my phone rings, there's only one reason my phone rings. And that's because somebody thinks I can help them solve a problem they've been thus far unsuccessful solving on their own. Mm-hmm. And so then I have these really, really highly educated people, most of them, reasonably accomplished, who call me saying, "Hey, I need help solving this problem," and I start giving them some answers. They're like, "Oh, that would never work." And so that's an example of somebody. So like doctors, I'll tell you two groups: doctors and accountants. Doctors because they think they know it all, and accountants. The reason I don't work with accountants, they struggle with the whole first time offer. So, if you think about Bob Stupak's offer, he was giving a room that was more than $400 for those 2 nights. He was selling that at a 10% discount. He was throwing in a free bottle of champagne, free drinks, and $600 of chips. At some point there was an accountant that was having a heart attack because all the accountant saw was all that money going out. And for these first time offers to work, what you have to do is you have to take money out of the lifetime value bucket. And you have to have a reasonable, not perfect understanding, but a reasonable understanding of the lifetime value of a customer. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take some of that money out of that bucket and we're going to move it into customer acquisition to make the acquisition faster, easier, and more beneficial for both. And I haven't been able to move accountants across that transom. They just, they'll say, "Sorry, I'm leaving money on the table," or "I'm doing too much for free." I'm like, you're building a relationship. You're building a relationship. Now, I'll give you an example. I have a friend, I think very highly of him. He's a very good guy. I love him. I mean, he actually took care of my family when I was in the hospital, and I couldn't, when I was unconscious. And so I was trying to help him out. He had some new service he was talking about rolling out, and this was in February of this year. And he said, what it is pay me $300 a month, and I'll keep your books balanced, in order for the whole year. And then when it comes tax season, I'll file your taxes at no additional charge as a part of that $300. Like, okay, so that's $3,600 of income per year from somebody who's in this program. And I asked him, I said, if you had 5 new clients show up today saying, "I want that, can you do my 2022 taxes?" I said, "Would you be able to service them?" He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely." Well, in the US, your business taxes are due, your business filing is due in March 15th. I said, "Here's what you do." I said, "You put this offer out and you say, I'll do your 2022 taxes for $300 as your first payment for enrolling in this program. And guess what? We'll keep your books for the rest of the year and we'll do your taxes next year." And he said, "Oh no, I can't do that." I was like, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, I'm leaving money on the table." I said, you're getting new customers. They're going to pay you thousands of dollars." He's like, no, I can't do that." 4 months later, he celebrated getting his first customer into that program. And I look at them like, dude, You just lost tens of thousands of dollars because you couldn't get over that hump of, hey, I'm going to give a little bit in advance, just to kick off this relationship, move people to action, give them an amazing value that, by the way, we have this thing in our head where we're always trying to balance the scales. We get uncomfortable when we feel like people have given us more than we have paid for. And so we have this thing where we try to rebalance the scales. And I'm like, that's part of the reason these we could spend another hour breaking down all the reasons these first time offers work. But that's one of them, is you're unbalanced. You're starting the relationship with the scales unbalanced in your customer's favor. And that's a really great way to start a relationship where they feel like they've gotten more than they deserved.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I get. See, I'm a science artist, creative kind of person, and I'm like, that's not. You're describing the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I would be on board with doing something like that. It's like, I'll do your taxes for $300, and then, hey, you're on board for the rest of the year, and then we do your taxes again. I got a new customer worth $3,600 to me, right?
Yeah, well, and in reality, much more. If you look at the lifetime value, they're probably going to be with you at least 5 years.
Probably.
Yeah. And if we just look at
I don't want to do that much arithmetic, but that's
right. Yeah, no, fair enough.
but that sounds, at least sounds reasonable.
Yeah, and okay, so you spend a little bit on the front end. I mean, I do this. So I'll tell you that when one of the things, and we haven't broken down the elements, but one of the things, the first two elements of the first time offer is it has to be an impulse purchase. That means coins in the cushion, the couch, money in the wallet, or the B2B equivalent. Another way of putting it is, if whoever you're presenting it to has to ask anybody for authorization to spend that money, you have it priced too high. It needs to be an amount of money they can spend and they could completely waste and nobody would ever notice. Mm-hmm. And the next thing is it has to deliver a disproportionate amount of value to price. And so we find that for B2B, most of the time, the proper price for a first-time offer is $497, because almost anybody in any business has can spend $500 without anybody ever noticing. Nobody's going to hunt them down to find out how it was spent. But in that, we're trying to pack 10x the value. So in that $500, we're trying to pack $5,000 worth of value. That's part of what makes it irresistible. When you present it to to a qualified buyer, the only answer they'll give is yes. And I found that when people say no, you're just like, yep, don't know why, but sometimes I do know why, but also sometimes I don't know why, and just not my customer. And I've found out later, certain facts I didn't know at the time. I'm like, oh yeah, they would have been a bad customer, or we would have never won that business, or whatever it was. And that's the thing. So out of that $500, I spend $100 just putting a binder. So we compile the final results into a binder. We put a binder in their hand. That's 1/5 of the money we collect. We don't make money on this, but it's something where I'm willing to give in advance. I'm willing to invest in a relationship, just like that coffee date. I'm willing to invest this time because I think there may be something bigger here. I'm not going to be focused on making a profit right now. I'm going to focus on serving and helping somebody solve a problem in their life. And if I can help them solve a small problem, the amount of trust I build in that time is enormous.
Yeah. One last thought, because depending on the ticket value of your item in the industry you are, there's a long, elongated sales process. Does your method shorten that sales process to shorten the time from the coffee date to they say yes or no?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So the folks we were helping yesterday, helping folks build their own first time offer. That's one of our high ticket offerings. And the folks we were helping yesterday, we went from complete stranger to money in the bank in 3 days, or 3 weeks and 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fast.
That's, yeah, for a high ticket commitment.
That's in comparison to a lot of high ticket items, that's like warp speed, man.
Yeah.
Sorry,
right,
Trekkie.
But it's really simple. We helped them solve a problem. Once we helped them solve a problem, they felt really good about taking that next step.
Yeah. So, we're just about out of time. So, you really explained how you really, in a lot of ways, you explained who your ideal customer is, and I think that those who in our listeners that aren't your ideal, they've already backed out.
Yeah.
I really think that. So, what are the best ways to get a hold of you and work with you? For those who are actually still here with us, they're probably going to be your ideal client.
Yeah, I'm sure the accountants all hung up a few minutes ago. Stop listening, and that's okay. I mean, God bless them. They serve an important role in this life. It's back to that whole thing. I think they're great. We're probably not great together, but if your folks want to reach me, our website is allies4me.com. That's spelled ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com. I actually have a free gift, 2 free gifts for your audience. The one is a guide how to build these offers. Okay, they sound simple. They're really hard. My first time offer was a complete failure. My second offer failed. My third offer failed a little less. And eventually, after 18 months, I finally got something sort of working, and then we've perfected it over the last 5 years. And so I don't want your audience to go through all that painful learning that I had to go through. We have a guide on how to build these. And not only do we have a guide, but we also have a course, self-paced course, where we're going to give them 23 days access. The reason we put a limit on that is we're in the business of changing lives, and we study human behavior. And we know if somebody signs up for a free course with no limits, they will never take it. Their life will never be changed. So with a 23-day limit, what we find is people come in, they consume the content. And that's our goal. We want this to change your life. So if your audience wants to get those 2 gifts, all they have to do is go to our website, allies4me.com/influencer club, all lowercase, all one word. And that will get them those gifts. And love for them to consume that. If they want to reach out directly, we have a page on our website that says start here. I hope it's not a big surprise at this point that our first engagement is going to be pretty cheap, where we're going to try to deliver about $5,000 of value for $500. That's not a broad offer, and we make our lawyers made us make that clear on the website. We'll offer that to folks that we believe we can make a difference in their business.
Right. And I think that's the bottom line point is making the offer to those who is actually going to make a difference for, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for joining us today, Craig. It's been awesome, and I'm glad that the doctors were wrong. You're a wonderful asset to humanity.
Oh, Michael, thank you. That's so kind. So, yeah. One thing I've learned, the doctors, and I'm continuing to learn this lesson, the doctors were wrong about a lot more than that. But thank goodness, and how I survived that is a whole nother story, learning how to walk again and a variety of things. Maybe that's another conversation. But Michael, this has been a delight. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And find that subscribe button wherever it may be on the platform you're listening to us on.
So I wish upon that shooting star.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.